All right, welcome to the very first episode in what I hope is a new semi-ongoing series here on Toy Informer, and that is going to be a series that I did over on Renovision for a couple of episodes, but it just didn't catch over there. But hopefully, this being more of a collectibles area, this type of show might do better here on Toy Informer, and that is gaming gold. The idea here is that this is a sort of hidden gems type show to tell you about some video games that are pretty much, very collectible, and that you can make a few bucks if you can go and find them out there when you're out there digging, hunting, hitting up yard sales, whatever. These are some collectible video games that might be worth more than you think they are. Not just the sealed, brand new boxed or graded copies, which, yes, those are setting all-time highs and going for ridiculous amounts of money. I'm talking about even those loose games, those just loose cartridges from NES or Super NES, Sega Genesis, or those just random discs that are just in a CD shell from the original PlayStation or Xbox, etc. Even Sega Saturn. These are loose games as well as boxed. I'll give you some boxed and new case prices too, but loose games that can do very, very well that you might stumble across when you're hitting a yard sale, a flea market, Goodwill, wherever. These are the types of fun things that I think you can still find if you go out there looking. And just some fun stuff to know. Hopefully you'll enjoy this series. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing this tiny little channel into something bigger and better and get me some more time to give you some more interesting content outside of doing the top 10 toys and I'm giving you those toy alert news updates. Looking at a few other options for some semi-ongoing series here on the channel. So please let me know the types of things that you guys might be interested in the world of toys, video games, collectibles in general, things that you might want to see, whether they might be non-sports card related, sneakers, lunch boxes, trapper keepers, any weird oddball things I'm interested in talking about here. Vintage t-shirts even. This is just fun things that are collectible that you might not know are worth money, things you might even have at your houses or in your collections that might go for a few bucks. But with that all said, I know it's kind of a longer intro, but it is the first in a new series, so these intros do go a little bit longer. But with that all said, let's take a look at this week's series of video games, which I actually went with a theme this time out. I don't know if I'm going to do this every time, but I do have a theme this time out. So just hang out for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, so let's just get into our first episode, which this is the old background I used for the original show. It is one of my favorite characters, and it is the subject of the games that we're going to talk about today, and that is Mega Man. Yes, my t-shirt might have given it away, but this background definitely sells it, and we're going to talk about those Mega Man video games that you can find as sort of, hidden gems, things that you can go and dig out while you're out there, doing your shopping, you're collecting, you're hunting, etc. All right, so I had a couple of these games, and again, on the original series over on Renovision, but we can do with some updated prices and with some updated options. So let's just start it off with the original, the OG, the very first Mega Man #1. Yes, the first Mega Man game that came out on the Nintendo Entertainment System way back in the day. Yes, that NES cartridge. I know this must bring back a lot of nostalgia, but for many of you, you just want to grab this thing, blow in on it, pop it in, and just get started. Do that character select screen and just get off to running on your platform gaming goodness. But here we're just talking about the collectability of this game and the price. Yes, this is the first game, and yes, it does all right, but it is not, by far, it is not the most expensive game on our list. These aren't ranked in any particular order. I just kind of grabbed a hodgepodge from a few different video game systems and picked out some interesting options for us to talk about here. If you guys wanted them ranked, I could do it as far as top 10 goes, like I did with top 10 toys, but I feel like this isn't necessary on this show. So we're just going to look at it just based off of some sales and some video games that I think are interesting, starting with this one. First one being $85. So $85 ain't too bad if you can find this loose cartridge out there. Maybe it's in a collection, maybe it's at a yard sale. They got a whole stack of old Nintendo games, and maybe you get the whole stack for a cheap price, or maybe you just say, hey, can I get this one for $1 or $5? And it's an $85 purchase right there. Just saying. Granted, if we talk about games like this in the sense of if you can find it complete in box, well, That's a whole nother ballpark. That's a whole nother game, a whole nother level of collecting for these, which we can talk about, and I'll give you some prices, but that's not the point of why I'm doing this show. I'm doing it for the loose price, and then we'll go from there. But if you did manage to find a complete in-box, meaning you have the box, you have the instruction manual, you have the slipcase even, then we're talking about this thing being 600 bucks. So 600 bucks goes a long way if you have that box in the manual. And if you somehow manage to find one of these still sealed in its original packaging, brand new, that's over $1,300. And you might want to think about sending it off to one of those grading companies that grade video games, because at that point, you're dealing with something special there. That's, again, not what I'm talking about here. Those are some huge numbers and some big prices. That's kind of part of the fun, but the chances of you finding those things are slimmer than you might think. So we'll stick with the loose ones as the focus, but I still want to give you that context just in case. That's our first game, and that's our first installment of Mega Man. From there, multiple series of games go Mega Man 2, 3, 4, and as you might expect, based off of the character select screen, I don't know if you can see my shirt here, but this is the character select screen from Mega Man 5, and that is our next game, also still on the original Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES. This cartridge here, if you find it loose, you find it raw, 117 bucks, almost $120. Not too bad. Better than volume 1. Volume 2, 3, and 4, those you're still talking about like 30 to, $40, $50. They'll still do well with a lot of these games if you can find them. But I kind of want to talk about the more expensive, more pricier things, the ones you really want to dig out if you can. If you can only buy like one or two, these are the ones that really you got to keep an eye out for. So 1 and 5 are probably the gems of the original NES ones. So keep those in mind when you're digging. You're looking for 1, you're looking for 5. 120 bucks ain't bad. Granted, if you can find 5 complete in box, surprisingly, even though the loose is more than number 1, the complete in box is less. It's $318. Yeah, well, it's because this is a newer volume, so you might find it more with all of its collectible stuff. But still, 300 bucks if you can find it just because it has its box and its manual. That's all we really got in those original games. Like, you might have like an advertisement card or something like that, something that's trying to sell you a Game Genie so you can cheat. Sure, maybe a strategy guide, even like a little insert card to try to get you to buy those. Subscribe to GamePro or Nintendo Power. But by and large, it was just the instruction manual, the little black slipcase that you put the cartridge in, and then the box. Mind you, if you find one still sealed, it's almost 1,200 bucks. Once again, not too bad. Very, very close to episode 1, but not quite all the way there. But with that all said, let's see what we got next. I don't want to spend too much time on any one of these. This is supposed to be kind of a quick rundown. Just kind of feeling my way through. It's been a while since I've done one of these gaming shows and see the things and the points that you guys find interesting. Again, I'm soliciting your input. Please put it down below. Let me know what you want more focus on, what you want less focus on. If you don't care about these new in box prices because you feel like the chances of finding them are very, very slim, you don't even want them, I'll leave them out if you just want the loose prices. We can go from there. You want to see some screenshots of the actual games in play? I can share that stuff too if you want. I don't know. I figured just for now, we'd show the cartridges because that's all you're really going to be looking for, or maybe even the boxes because that's the stuff you're digging for. But if you want more of that, let me know in the comments below. But for now, we'll just move it on to our next game, which, again, we're doing more Mega Man, but we're going to move systems this time out over to the handheld portable Nintendo system. We're talking about Game Boy. You remember your little Game Boy, little black and white screens to start, and then we eventually got Game Boy Color, etc. Anyway, Mega Man 5, once again, but this time on the Game Boy, is probably the one you want to go and look for. Why? Well, 222 reasons why. That's right, 222 bucks for the Game Boy version of this Mega Man 5 game. And if you can find it with a box and it's manual, so you got a complete in-box, well, we're talking over $1,500 now. Now we're talking. And if you happen to somehow still find a sealed, brand new copy, I don't know where you're going to find it, but if you do, 2,200 bucks. Again, these things aren't cheap. These are things that are worth knowing when you're out there looking. You might think, oh, old Nintendo games, I know. Conceptually, hey, they're collectible. People look for things. But I'm just trying to put real context and put images in your head so you remember me telling you about this when you stumble across them. That's what I'm trying to do. Share information so you know what you're looking at if you come across an old Nintendo collection while you're wandering that flea market, while you're on vacation somewhere, or you just like to go to, I used to like to go to flea markets all the time. I haven't been in a while, but this is the kind of stuff that you just kind of want to look through. You know, over the table, you're like, oh, what do you got there? You hit up a yard sale. You might even ask them, hey, you got any old video games? Then they go and they pull out this old box of old NES carts and they go, yeah, they wouldn't take these back at my GameStop when I tried to sell them way back in the day. And here we go. Who knows? Who knows? People hold on to a lot of things, and you'd be surprised what you might find hitting up a yard sale or two. We're going to move on over to the other system. I was always a Nintendo kid. As a kid, I had my NES, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and 64. Those are my systems. You know, eventually we got to PlayStation as I got a bit older, etc. I know the GameCube came out after that, but I was never really a Sega kid. But Sega Game Gear. Sega Game Gear also has the original Mega Man game here, or a version of the Mega Man game here for their little handheld system. And this mini cart for their Game Gear can get you $220. It's just like the Game Boy game. It's pretty expensive. And again, you're going to look, this picture might be huge, but the actual game you're looking for, it's going to be pretty small because it was sliding into a little handheld system. So the game cart itself is pretty tiny for the handheld ones. Box, $1,500 if you want to get a complete in box. Brand new, $27 on this one. Yeah, not cheap. Game Gear, again, didn't have as quite the following as the Game Boy did, and there were many versions of Game Boys throughout the years, but still, don't let it be long forgotten, but it is often underappreciated handheld system, I guess, the Sega Game Gear. Up next, I think we have about 10 of these, just so you have a context of how long the show actually is. I'm going to do about 10 and then do a ghost, which we'll get to at the end. But for now, we're going back to, again, my bias and also the bias of this series. Most of the Mega Man games really are Nintendo focused. Yes, they went to other systems, but OG original Mega Man was always really a Nintendo thing, and Super Nintendo not to be excluded. So we have Mega Man 7, which did happen to end up on the SNES, so the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And this was one of my favorites too. I love this game as well, and this one does well. $250 for this Super Nintendo cartridge. Super Nintendo was probably one of my favorite systems, if I can think back of all the games that I used to play. Yes, there are a lot of good NES games, but Super Nintendo was really, to me, 16-bit graphics. Oh boy, it really kicked it up a notch. And playing like those old Star Wars games, the Ninja Gaidens, the Castlevanias, the Mega Mans, Chrono Trigger, even hitting up, some of those RPGs were really, I look back on that stuff fondly until PlayStation. Then PlayStation 1 was a whole nother level to me. But with that said, inbox, about $950. Brand new, if you find it, $3,000. $3,000 if you can find a brand new inbox for this one. Craziness. Yeah, and I love the whole old black box, the Super Nintendo look. Man, just thinking back, the old Street Fighter 2. Every time you go to the GameStops and the Babbages, I don't know if you guys had an electronics boutique in your mall. Like, those are the shops I remember going into, looking at all the games, going, wow. And always having to stay on the Nintendo side of things, because like I said, I didn't have a Sega, so I didn't go to the right. I didn't go to the left. I always went to the right, because that's where the Nintendos were, in the stores that I went to anyway. But with that said, as my mind is wandering back on nostalgia and thinking about all the shops in the mall that I used to like to buy video games from, because other stores remember like Toys R Us used to have all the video games locked up in a cage, like it was an impound at the police station. Like, where are the games? They're all locked up. You can only look at a little plastic card out here. You bring it up to somebody, they'll go fetch it from the back because they don't trust anybody at the Toys R Us. I don't know, weird stuff you remember, right? But sticking with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, we also had the Mega Man X series. So basically, when you kind of get the 10, they kind of updated Mega Man and introduced more, side characters. You had his dog, you had Proto Man, and all that stuff. A lot of fun little additions here as they brought through with the X series. But we're going to look at two in particular, with X2 being the first one from Super Nintendo. This, $160 if you can find the second one of these. I'm sorry, $140. Still not bad. $139 ain't too bad. In the box, $356. Brand new, $1,100. Still decent amounts for a game like that. And that's for volume 2. Meanwhile, the next one is even more because it's a little bit harder to find because I guess I guess sales kind of dropped a little bit, but I don't know. I still think they went pretty strong considering how many collected editions we get. But Mega Man X3, also on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, is another one you definitely want to be on the lookout for because this one can get you 300 plus. $305 on this cartridge. So yeah, cartridge alone. I mean, yeah, you might find the little plastic covering that these used to come in too, but you can get those aftermarket or buy those anywhere. Just get that cartridge, make sure it's it looks pretty good. Hopefully it works. It's kind of hard to test games these days unless you have the old systems. I know they have a lot of those systems that play everything if you plug them in, but I don't know. Just saying, kind of hard to check these things these days, but I would still take a shot if it's cheap enough, no matter what. $305 in a box, almost 1,000 on this one, and brand new. Well, just like the other, 3,100. Brand new again, but finding a brand new game like this that's decades later who didn't open it, that's a real tough ask. Still, complete in box is fine because a lot of people like myself were weird and we saved boxes, put them like in the back of our closets, and the manuals were all in like a separate box. And if you wanted to take the time and like sort things out and put them back where they belonged, you could, because I used to save the boxes. I had no intentions of ever doing anything with them, but I saved them. Again, the OCD, weird collectible nature of me having all these comic books around me, probably fed into that. But that's not as hard to imagine finding for $1,000 rather than the brand new. Brand new, really, really tough. Really, really tough to find something still sealed. But yeah, in case you do, those are the prices. We're about halfway through, so let's move on to some discs. Yeah, not everything was a cartridge. And let's go on to some of the discs, starting off with Sega Saturn. Yes, remember when Sega decided to move over first into the realm of CDs, I believe? Sega Saturn, I think, led the GameCube by a big stretch, I believe. GameCube was, again, a whole different animal because Nintendo had to be weird, just like they did with the Wii and even with the Switch. Nintendo had to be different. They just wanted to give you the next video game console that was just as good and graphics are just as good as the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox 360, etc. No, they had to do their own weird thing. That's always the case with Nintendo. But Sega at the time was going into the realm of CDs with the Sega Saturn, with Mega Man 8, the Anniversary Collector's Edition. This thing, if you find just the disc, these could even be mixed in with CDs for all you know. Get to digging. $224 for this one. So Mega Man 8 on the Sega Saturn, $224. And if you can happen to find the case and everything, $600. Granted, these cases are weird. They're like tall boy CD cases. They just gave it a little bit extra, and they got the manual that slides in as the front. PlayStation games were still like regular CD size, but Sega Saturn, they went with like that bigger style. Made it a little bit more, I guess, impressive on your shelf. But $600 if you can find one still in the case. Still sealed, it's 1,000. Just saying, $1,000 if you can find one sealed. But moving on to another disc, Mega Man, what do we got here on the Saturn? X4. So Mega Man X4 also at the time, because they kind of split the series off and doing their own things, their own storylines with the X series and the regular series. But Mega Man X4, another game. It's like $127. Not bad for a CD game that you can find, just a disc on its own. And if you could find the case, $346. Again, not a bad price. Granted, sealed is only just under $600, which you think it'd be a bit more, but I don't know. Mega Man 4 doesn't have the same draw as maybe some of the other titles here. That's why I don't know. I still think finding a sealed Sega Saturn game would be a feat all in itself just to find. But what do I know? But moving on, again, just want to move on. We're going to go next with actually a newer game. This is actually an anniversary edition. I didn't want to totally exclude these variants and special editions, etc., because we should talk about them too. I know there sometimes can be different, but in this case, we're talking about Mega Man 2. Awesome blue case that they put on this thing, but the 30th anniversary edition of this. So this only came out a few years ago, really. So you might be able to find something like this out there. And if you do, just this blue cart alone get you over $100. I mean, that ain't terrible. If you find it with the box, you're not going to get much more. So the cartridge alone, at 106, and then if you got the box, 110. If it's still sealed, well, now we're talking closer to 150. But still not bad for a legacy cartridge, kind of a special edition thing. Again, I don't know where you're going to find this. Maybe there's some weird corners of the internet that people haven't searched it out, and there's some weird video game seller that's got like a still under construction AOL online account website page on damn, I can't even think about what are those old website addresses from way back in the day. But point being, if you find something like this, you can still make a few bucks if you can find it cheap enough. And with that all said, those are the regular editions I wanted to talk about. And just to wrap our show up here at the end, we will, and as I can, and I'll try to do this each time out, whether we do this by subject or just random selection of video games, which I think I like doing more. But I figured for this first one, we'd focus on Mega Man. But I did want to finish the show up here going on with our Ghost. So just like comic books, this is going to be an impossible to find video game or used game, etc. Just something that's just not out there, whether it be some weird limited edition, some prototype game, just something that just they didn't have a lot of copies. It was really limited print, whatever it might have been. There are some ghosts in the realm of video games. So I want to try to share one as often as I can, if not at the end of every show that we do. And in this case, for Mega Man, we do have a Mega Man specific ghost to talk about. And that goes back to our very first game. That is Mega Man 1. What are we looking at here? We're looking at what appears to be the same game. It looks like the same NES cartridge that you might find anywhere. But as I got many of these prices and some of the averages here from Price Charting, which is a very helpful site if you like video games, their note is that this version was never supposed to be released commercially. And there's only 84 copies known to exist today. 84 copies of this particular version, which we will call the 5-screw version. And what are we talking about? We're talking about the back. So look at the back of this cartridge. And the 5-screw version, as you can see here, there's 5 screws, as opposed to the normal cartridge edition, which only have 3 screws, which you can see there. You got the middle and the 2 at the bottom. At the top, it was a snap case. So the clips snapped at the top. The 5-screw version didn't have the snaps. Those required screws as the rest of it. So it was a completely screwed in edition as opposed to the modern cartridge that you know with the snaps. Most cartridges had those snaps. So these 84 copies of this 5-screw edition, and just to give you another look on its own of what the back of the 5-screw looks like, I'll give you that here. This game, if you find it by itself, raw, just this cartridge. Yes, there's only 84. Chances of finding it are very slim, but it's good to know. Check your copy if you have one, because this is almost $10,000. It's almost $10,000 if you can find yourself one of these fabled 84 copies of the 5 screws on Mega Man. Yeah, 10 grand. I don't know how you're going to find a complete in box or what the difference might be on the box per se, but Price Charting gave estimates. I don't believe any of these actually have sold at these prices. I think this is just based off of the criteria that they usually do with their algorithms, etc. They estimate that if they did have a boxed version of this, it would be about $35,000. And if it was still somehow sealed, but if it's sealed, I don't know how you would find if it had the 5 screws. They put a number of 142,000. Again, I think those are crazy numbers, crazy algorithm numbers. Don't think they really matter in this case because I don't think you're going to find something like that. Or how would you know if you found something like that without opening it? Point being, just that loose 5-screw version is $10,000. So look at the back of your copy of Mega Man if you still have it, or if you still have one, or have access to one. Take a look at it. And if it's got the 5 screws, you found yourself some gold, some gaming gold. And with that all said, that is all I've got for you on this first edition of this show. And until next time, this has been Gaming Gold. Like I said, I'll try to do this maybe every couple of weeks, rotate it in with another fun series that I'm thinking about doing about around the world of weird collectibles. So yeah, plenty more stuff coming your way here on Toy Informer. So make sure if you're not subscribed already, you hit that subscribe button right now and keep telling your friends so we keep growing this tiny little channel. And with that all said, I'll see you all later with some more content. All right.